Good morning, everyone. It's morning here in sunny California. Not so sunny today. I'm Josette Diaz, and you are welcome. I'm welcoming you to a soulful pause. Sorry, I had too many things happening all at once. So, welcome to a soulful pause. It's so nice to have you here. And I have a wonderful guest today, and her name is Grace C.W. Liu. And you're going to have a really interesting conversation about communication. So, before we dive into that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a self awareness coach for women in midlife. I really work with the ladies that are high achieving, that specifically struggle with overgiving, overdoing, and people pleasing. So I have a lovely group that is a membership that I would love to invite you to. It is a group where we reveal our own self awareness through art and the creative process. And this membership is really special. There are 3 different live events that you get to attend each month, and you have access to creative workshops as well as one-on-one coaching opportunities with me that's included in your membership. So it's a wonderful place to gather and create community. So before we get started, I'd like to offer you a moment to just pause and take a minute to get settled in.
Ladies, are you the one who gets it all done? Always pushing forward, always striving? In the constant chase for success, when was the last time you took a moment just for you? We're always on the go, rushing from one task to the next, barely pausing to catch our breath. What if we took a moment to pause? Imagine listening in, really listening, to the wind, to your heartbeat, to your soul. What if slowing down was the key, a chance to discover a deeper connection with yourself? And from that connection expand it to those you love, to the moments that truly matter. Pause, reflect, connect. It's time to live fully from the inside out.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Let me see. I have one thing here that needs to be taken care of. Okay, there we are. I would like to introduce to you my lovely guest, Grace. So, Grace is a speech and language pathologist with over 23 years of expertise. She empowers introverted, shy, and quiet women to overcome stagnant communication syndrome. Passionate about fostering harmony, Grace helps clients resolve communication breakdowns effectively, enabling them to feel understood and impactful in all areas of life. Through self-valuing, boundary discovery, and proactive communication skills, Grace's clients find greater support and peace with partners, family, and work associates. She guides them to speak confidently, embrace their worth, and create fulfilling relationships. Grace believes that amazing solutions are within reach through clear, intentional communication. Now, I'm so excited, Grace, to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on. It's lovely to have you be with us. And I'm so excited to talk about all of the things that you do, especially you speak of in the beginning of your bio. It says, stagnant communication syndrome. And I'd love for you to kind of like give us a little bit of insight after you say hello. Have a minute to, breathe for a second. So tell us, how did you bring yourself into working with women and specializing with the shy and introverted woman that on communication?
Well, thank you, Josette, for first of all inviting me to be on your show, the Soulful Pause. I love it. I was just so engrossed in the video with the imagery, and then then I popped on. And I was like, oh, but I wasn't finished watching the imagery yet.
I know.
Because you really have the feeling. So with communication, it was like I've almost felt like you asked me kind of two parts, like how I got involved, and then the stagnant communication syndrome.
Yes.
So I'll target how I got involved. So I grew up with my traditional Chinese parents, and I am also an introvert. I'm shy. I'm quiet, and growing up with my traditional Chinese parents, I have learned that girls are to be seen, not heard, and that my duty was just to follow whatever they told me to do. And so from there, I also grew up in the Western culture because I went to, school here first in Canada, then in the US. So I grew up in the Western culture with my peers and with my teachers, and they would want to know about my opinions and what I wanted to do. And it was just like, I don't know, because, I was taught that my duty was to obey my parents. And so they wanted me to be doctors, lawyers, accountants, a career that made money.
Yeah.
So it was really hard for me to navigate, between the Eastern and the Western culture and everything. And so I had to work through myself, my value, my worthiness first, to then find my voice. It's not like I didn't have a voice. We all have voice, but it's just to feel worthy enough, to feel value enough to say it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that, a lot of women do feel like they have certain parameters around how they speak, period, right? No matter where you come from. It's like, it depends on, obviously when you're raised in a certain culture, there's different parameters, and varying cultures have different parameters. And I find that I have struggled myself personally with some of the things that you mentioned. Growing up in a codependent environment really didn't lend me to have an opinion or to have thoughts of my own. And so I can relate to what you're saying, and I love that. So what brought you to have the desire to work with other women to help them?
Well, then it comes to the second part of what I like to call the stagnant communication syndrome, because a lot of the times we don't realize we have the communication issue. We just feel like, oh, we're not being heard, or I feel like whatever I say doesn't matter. And then over time that can feel very stressful, and then we might raise our voices and it's not the right time to raise the voice, or we might feel like the more we're not heard, the more we will need to yell or shout, or say certain phrases like nobody ever hears me, or it just like goes around and around in a circle, and it's just like, I like to use this analogy. It's like stagnant water, right? When there's no movement, it's just there, and it's just like the same pattern. And over time, that water gets murky and it gets muddy and yucky, right? So it's the same thing over time. If you feel like you're not being heard or not being understood, or you feel like whatever you say doesn't matter because people just ignore it, or, they do something else. And so over time, you might start to feel like, what's the use, right, of me saying anything? And then over time, your feelings will become muddy and, all murky, and, that's just like the icky feeling, right?
Yeah.
So what I wanted was to help first myself, and then I wanted to help others to realize that they don't need to feel that way, that there is a way to break out of that stagnant communication syndrome. And it's just, again, you might not realize, and a lot of women may not realize that it's a communication issue. They just feel like, oh, I'm stressed, nobody listens. But over time, it can actually, become a communication issue. And then, you can relieve some of that stress and the anxiety around having to communicate and what have you by just figuring out a better way.
Yes, I
Right.
love that. I mean, it's interesting that you said, I like that what you said about how women may not recognize that it's a communication issue. They blame themselves. They think there's something wrong with them, that they just they're not worth being visible or heard.
Exactly. Yes.
And so I love that you've coined the phrase stagnant communication syndrome, correct?
I did.
Yes, and that's fantastic. It's fabulous because it really pinpoints the fact that when you stay in a habit or a pattern, it just keeps going. It gets really murky. It then gets denser, like you described. And I think that is just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's such a great pathway to let women recognize that there's a doorway there.
Absolutely. And, I always feel like communication is not just about a skill, like,
Mhm.
words and, how to use the tone of voice, body language, it's everything. And, if say there's energy in everything. Well, there's
Yeah.
energy in communication. When you're
Yeah.
in a communication and conversation with someone, you have your energy and you also have the other person's energy. And the other person has their energy behind their words, behind their tone of
Mhm.
voice, behind their body language, and you're exchanging energy. And when the energy flows, right, when it works out
Right.
well, you feel like there's this connection with this person and you just want to keep
Yes.
talking to this person and what have you. But then sometimes you might come across and the energy feels off,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, just like, oh, I have to talk to this person, or, and then you feel stressed about it because you feel stressed because you have to talk to this person and it can feel like such a big effort, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, it's also understanding for me, it's not just like, oh, learning communication as a skill, like, oh, what to say, but also the energy behind it, how you
Mhm.
can use your energy, right, to foster that better communication for that relationship.
Yeah, I really think that it's so important what you just mentioned about the energy behind the words because that lends to intention, right? And and I think this is, because we know each other, I know a little bit more about, behind this, that driving that intention, it's like you can say something the same way with and it will come across differently depending on the energy you put behind it or the intention you have in your phrasing. It's sort of like the in the US, the Southern um, statement of "Oh, bless your heart." It's been known or said that sometimes in the South, someone will say, "Oh, bless your heart," and it's really a dig and not a compliment. So it's kind of like that same sort of vein of stream of energy that I hear you speaking of. Does that
Yes,
sound about what you mean? Well,
right.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like even hearing some words like people say like, "Oh, you must decide now," and some people might get stuck with that because they're like, "Wait, well, if I decide now and I decide wrong, what's going to happen,
Right.
and what have you." So for some people, not all, but some people might might change the word and use the word choose, right?
Mm,
Like make your choice, or
mhm.
I get to choose now to just to
Yes.
decide if that works, or I get to choose now, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. So it's kind of like when you hear certain things that people say, and if
Mhm.
it doesn't resonate, figure out what words work for you. For some people it might be balance, for some people it might be harmony. It
Yeah.
just it's because it's words, right? It's just words. However, it's the energy behind the words,
Mhm.
that you're feeling from, because of, we all have our stories, we all have our
Yeah.
own experiences, and all of that plays a part. And then it's kind of figuring out, well, what words might I need to swap out, or what, and if, the tone of voice, trying to figure out, well, what is the tone of voice, and
Yes.
or even figure out why that tone of voice like really irks you, like, or triggers you, right? Why is that tone of voice triggering you? Because perhaps there's a story or your experience from it. And that if you heal that part of it, that maybe when you hear that certain tone of voice again, it won't trigger you as much.
That's true. That's true. And I'd like to ask you a little bit of a deeper question around communication style. So do people have different ways that they communicate with others, and how do you recognize that about yourself? And tell us what you do to help ladies determine what their style is.
Well, that's a great question, Josette. Well, we all have our own style of dressing, right?
Mhm.
So, of course, we all also have our own style of communication. Why? Because we have our own personalities, and also what motivates us, what
Yeah.
our inner motivation might be, what we have learned from our experiences, from life lessons, our own personality, all of that. And then we start to have the style. And so I came up with 4 styles, and there might be more, but just to make it really simple, I just kind of narrowed down to 4 styles, and I call them the fireball, which are the passionate people that are such motivated and like wants to get the results. And then we have the nurturer, who just want to provide the guidance, the
Mhm.
support. They're a little bit more gentle. Then you got the diplomatic, where they have ideas, but they're open to hearing what other people have to say, and they understand that other people might have their own ideas. So they're just open to any possibilities. And then you have the humors. And the
Mhm.
humors are the ones that, when the conversation might get a bit too deep, too serious, they just want to, help to lighten up the mood a bit.
Yes, yes. Okay, good. So how do you find out which one you are? Do you have something a tool you use?
So I do have a communication style quiz,
Mhm.
and it's free. So if anyone wants to take the free communication style quiz, you can do so. And it's just a few questions, and then it'll kind of lay out a bit of what style you are. Then, but if you want to dig deeper of your style, well, then, obviously you can work with me, right?
Yeah.
And then we can dig deeper into what style you are by what words you tend to choose, by your tone of voice, which ones uplift you, which ones
Mhm.
trigger you. So then all of that, we can start to figure out more of, your communication style. And also know there's no right or wrong, good or bad communication style.
Yeah.
And yes, you have a primary style, but you can also have a secondary, and you might possibly have a third. But
Mhm.
we just talk about, for the quiz, you might just find out more of your primary style, but know that you can have a secondary as well.
Yeah, that's really good that you mentioned that, because I think that sometimes we think we just fit into one box, yet we don't. We're complicated, right? We have varying degrees of our personalities and how we, function in the world, and other things influence us. I'd really like to hone in on a little bit more of the empowerment that you offer women through understanding their communication style. Like, you laid out these wonderful different avenues in which we communicate, and knowing that you can have a mix of others. How do women take this information and then become more empowered in how they speak to their loved ones, their spouses, their friendships, their bosses, their employees, etc.?
So the other tool that I use is, and I'm sure many of you, your audience and you yourself are familiar with, is called the human design. So I use the human design, and everybody has a type, a strategy, authority, and then
Mhm.
depending upon what centers are defined or open, it's to help to embrace who you are. And then based on what centers might be open, there might be some questions because sometimes, with those open centers, it depends on who you're speaking with. And so sometimes the frustration or the trigger might happen. And so by, being aware, you can ask yourself, is this what's happening here?
Mhm.
And then you can say, oh, yes, it is. Then I can let it go. I don't need
Mhm.
to keep fighting, the statement or try to fight the point of view. um or it's like, no, I this is important that needs to be said. It's, and so you feel more confident than like, this needs to be said, this needs to be
Yeah.
heard. So, I use the human design and that part to explain, why the person communicates the way they do, and
Mhm.
then what they can do to help them to either know, yes, to communicate it, or what, there is power in silence.
That's
And
true.
so, sometimes it's best to use silence.
Yeah. 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 So understanding how um, you kind of fit in the world, not only energetically, because you spoke of energetics and what's behind the words. And I do believe that each word is coded, right? Each word has like a coding to it. And so, how we use our language and how we project our thoughts through words is really important. And so, using human design, I'm just kind of reiterating what I hear you say.
Mhm.
Using human design allows you to understand where your strengths are energetically for yourself, and when it's time to have an opportunity to just receive and to listen, and to maybe not to hold on to those words until you can develop something that's a little bit more concrete from the other person.
Yes, that's
So
right.
I love, 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 love all of that, because I think it's really important. There's so much, many more tools that are available to us that we don't always recognize. And how do women find, can you kind of give me like an example of one of your clients that used these tools and made some shifts and became more empowered through
Sure.
the communication
Sure.
tool?
So I had a client that she wasn't sure, like, if she was making the right decisions,
Mhm.
and she was like, oh, she was kind of going back and forth and what have you. And then I reminded her of her human design, right?
Yeah.
And and she was like going, oh, I'm so stressed and stuff. And with her, where her center was opened, it was actually where sometimes they like to have a bit of stress. So, so I was asking her, well, is this really like added stress that you don't want, or did you kind of create some of the stress? And she
Mm.
says, oh, you know what? I think I'm creating some of the stress for myself. And then she says, oh, I need to like alleviate a little bit of the stress. And then she's felt like, you know what? I can trust my energy. I can trust, because where hers, she had a defined sacral center, which is like her intuition. So her
Mhm.
gut feeling, she can rely on that. So
Yeah.
then she was like, you know what? I don't need to second guess myself. So ends up like sometimes when she's saying something, when she was saying like, when I want to tell somebody something, you
Mhm.
know, she almost felt like sometimes she was under pressure, like, oh, I have to make a decision really quick and tell that person. But then she goes, I can feel into my gut if I wanted to do this thing. So when
Mhm.
this person invited her to do something, she felt into her gut and she felt like, it didn't feel right. So it gave her the voice to say, I love to see you, but not today.
That's really brilliant.
Before she
Yeah.
would have just like, oh, I haven't seen my friend. I want to go see my friend, and
Right.
see a friend, and later she was like going, oh, I have all this other stuff to do. I should have, done this instead, So,
Mhm.
it's just to help to say, in a way to say, like, I felt into my energy and that energy said, not today.
Yes.
I can trust that. And then to give it a voice and just to say, not today. And she
Yes.
said, you know what? I was okay with that.
Yes. I mean, that's just beautiful because it not only was she creating a new pattern for herself, right? She
Exactly.
Because most of the time, her probably, I'm assuming, I'm kind of guessing here, that she would most likely just kind of suck up those other feelings and go because she wanted to see her friend rather than discerning and giving herself a whole different perspective on how to choose. And so that allowed her to choose differently, which is so good because I think so many of us, trap ourselves in that hamster wheel of, oh, I don't really want to do this part, but I'm going to do this so I can see them, and then we end up still walking away feeling dissatisfied and like we didn't take care of ourselves. And that's such another piece to, I think, what you help women with is digging in deeper to their own self-care. And that's something they probably don't recognize that they're going to get when they start working with you.
Right. Because, before she would have felt stress about it, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
she didn't say no because she felt like, oh, I have to say yes and what have
yeah,
you. But now when she felt into her human design and looked at her center and felt that energy and actually
right.
said no is a no, and she said it nicely, right?
Yeah,
Just like,
yeah, yeah.
I love to see you, but just not today. And
Mhm.
that to her was like, because then she
Yeah,
got whatever she needed to get done. And so
right.
she was just able to then, embrace her worthiness, embrace her
Mhm.
value, and just say what it is that she wanted to say.
I love that, Grace. It's like there's so many different paths to one thing, right? And like understanding that it's whatever path resonates with you the most. Maybe the biggest issue that is, up for you, you take that path and it all leads to the same things, which is such a beautiful thing. That's what I love about personal development and working with women to empower them because there's so many ways to do that. And I just love what you do to help women, especially, I grew up very shy, and it wasn't until I became an adult that I, overcame a lot of those obstacles that were in my way. And I think understanding what kind of like stops you is so important because once you acknowledge it and you give it its presence, it then can relax and dissolve and go where it needs to go somewhere else and doesn't have to sit with you anymore. So, and you give people such a great way to do that. What do you have? What other tools do you offer your clients? And what do you have coming up that's in the near future here? I'd love for you to be able to tell people how to reach you. And of course, everything that Grace says is going to be in the notes, and you'll have access to it in writing as well.
So I actually created a card deck called You Matter, Yes You Do. There's a journal book, but the journal book is blank. So it's just a tool that you can use to like write gratitudes, or you can use it with the journal prompts and the card deck.
Yeah.
So the card deck, You Matter, Yes You Do, is about really for the person to reflect, their own value, and then also reflect the value with others. you
Mm.
know s- so for example, one of the journal prompts will be like, what compliment will you give yourself today? Because so many times we might compliment other people, and then when we look at ourselves, we criticize ourselves, right? Like, oh, my hair doesn't look right, or I could lose a few pounds here and what have
Yeah.
you. So it's more about like, what, how about let's give ourselves a compliment.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So those are the type of, journal prompts that I have in my card deck. And I just, again, it's really making the person feel they matter, right? The person,
Mhm.
um, you know, whoever uses it to feel you matter, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I love that, Grace. It's so important to have tools that help us, realize how many valuable things that we have to offer the world and who we really are inside. It really is a pathway to connecting to your true self.
Right.
Your cards, you matter.
Well, because it's important of how we
Yeah.
communicate with ourselves, right? We
Yes,
need to have
right.
a good relationship with ourselves. So we need to be able to communicate with ourselves, right? With a
Mhm.
loving self-care way. And then we can also then foster relationship with others, right? Because after
Mhm.
we take care of ourselves, we communicate with ourselves, in a kind, loving way, then we also can learn and know then how to communicate in a kind, loving way with others, right? So
Yes,
it's about taking care of ourselves. And then when we take care of ourselves, then we can take care of others.
that's right, and that's why you matter.
Exactly. And that's why I came up with that card name, You Matter, because yes, you do.
Right, yes. I love that. What else do you have coming up? Because you have the quiz that's free, you have cards to help women to, well, anyone can buy the cards, and, to really define the things that matter to you most. What else do you have that's in your repertoire that you are, cooking up?
So I'm also wanting to help people with deep dive with their using the human design for
Mhm,
communication. So if anybody is interested in getting a full comprehensive um, human design report, where not only your strategies, your types, your authority, but also all the centers that might be defined or opened. When I say defined, I mean it's closed. Undefined is open.
mhm.
Um, and if any of those centers are opened, there's like exploratory questions. So there's a lot in that report to really help to guide for the communication.
Oh, that's wonderful. You definitely wanna jump on that. I've had this done before with Grace, and it is so valuable. So valuable. Really helps you understand how you communicate. So, thank you, Grace. I'm just thrilled that you were here. And I know that our conversation is going to offer people so many wonderful things. And everything that Grace has mentioned, I will be putting links in so that you can access her and make sure that you invest some time into connecting with Grace because she has so many valuable things to help you move you along in your communication. And so thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Josette. This has been so much fun. And I just again want to say thank you for letting me be here on Soulful Pause and to share my message and to share my story. And I want to, like I say, continue to empower the shy, introverted, quiet woman
Yeah.
to have, a better relationship and at home where I work through communication.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are interested in looking at creativity and raising your own self awareness and looking at, revealing the secrets in your subconscious, you can do that through art and create a whole different art language. So I invite you to join me in an artist guide to journaling, and that actually is happening this evening, and I'll have a link here as well. And that starts at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So if you are interested in knowing what that's all about, come and join us. I have a lovely group of women that are are on the same path of revealing revelations and creating their own art language. So come and join us. Have a wonderful day today, everyone, and we will see you next week.